The brutal reality of your current stagnation isn't born from a lack of desire, but from the intoxicating comfort of the search itself. You have mastered the art of leaning into the male mindset of preparation, rehearsing the person you intend to become while the person you actually are remains untouched. Consider the quiet tension of a boardroom where a man speaks with practiced passion about his next great move. The room nods, seduced by his energy. But there is always one observer in the corner, silent and still. He isn't listening to the words, he is watching the performance. He sees that the speaker isn't seeking progress, but the immediate dopamine of being perceived as ambitious. You aren't stuck. You are hiding. You've replaced the jagged edge of action with the smooth, rhythmic safety of wanting. Silent power belongs to the one who no longer needs to be heard.
The gym bag sits by the door, a permanent installation of a life that hasn't started. It has been there for 11 months. He mentions it often, not as a complaint, but as a marker of identity. When he speaks to friends, he speaks of someone who is currently in the process. This is the quiet architecture of performative proximity, the art of inhabiting the space right next to change, without ever crossing the threshold. To the outside world, he is a man in motion. To himself, he is a man of potential. But in the dark psychology of the human ego, this isn't a delay. It is a residence. You have likely mastered this. You don't avoid the task, you surround it. You research the best equipment. You engage in the male mindset of strategic planning. And you rehearse the conversations you'll have once the results arrive. This feels like progress. It has the weight of effort and the vocabulary of ambition, but it is actually a highly sophisticated form of silent power. The power to protect an idealized version of yourself from the brutal reality of an actual result. As long as you are almost ready, you remain a genius in waiting. The moment you begin, you risk becoming ordinary. Observe the way you describe your upcoming projects to others. Notice the specific relief that washes over you when they look impressed. In that moment, the performance has succeeded. You have received the social credit. For a victory you haven't earned, you aren't seeking feedback. You are seeking a witness to your intention. This is where the harsh truth lands. The more you talk about what you are going to do, the less likely you are to ever do it. The words act as a pressure valve, releasing the very tension required to fuel the action itself. You have traded the outcome for the image. The distance between preparation and action is where identity goes to die.
It is a comfortable purgatory. You have built a life out of half starts and perfect conditions that never quite materialize. This isn't laziness. Laziness is honest. It is a simple refusal to move. What you are doing is far more elaborate. You are managing your potential like a guarded currency, terrified that if you actually spend it, you'll find out how little you actually have. You have become an architect of the almost, building a towering structure of readiness that has no floor. The closest you will ever get to change is not the moment your confidence peaks. It is the moment the performance starts to feel hollow.
It is that quiet, unsettling minute at 2 a.m. when you realize the gym bag is just a prop, and the person you've been describing to your friends doesn't actually exist. That hollowness isn't a failure. It is the first honest signal you've sent yourself in years. You haven't been stalling. You have just been incredibly good at pretending. The skill you've used to stay almost there was always more exhausting than the work itself. Some people live their entire lives in this gap. They die with a library of unwritten books and a calendar full of tomorrow. They didn't lack talent.
They just preferred the safety of being a possibility over the brutal reality of being a fact. The door is open, but you are still standing in the hallway, admiring the way you look in the frame. She sits in a crowded room, but her eyes are fixed on the one person she hasn't spoken to yet. She has already asked 3 others for their honest opinion. They gave it, clear, unvarnished, and actionable. Yet, she is still moving, still searching. To an observer, she is diligent, humble, and thorough. But the harsh truth is far more surgical. She isn't collecting opinions, she is collecting time. This is the psychological machinery of strategic dependency. In our culture, seeking help is celebrated as a sign of maturity and emotional intelligence. We are told that wise people ask questions. But when the pattern of seeking becomes more consistent than the pattern of implementing, the inquiry is no longer about information. It is about the interval. It is about the comfortable space between hearing the truth and having to live it. You have likely found yourself in this loop, the endless research phase that feels like progress but functions as an anchor. The brutal reality is that seeking help provides a perfect social disguise. When you solicit feedback, you appear collaborative. When you ask for a mentor's guidance, you appear prudent. No one scrutinizes the seeker because the act of asking looks like effort. It generates a specific kind of social currency. You receive the credit of a person who is working on themselves, without the messy, unpredictable risk of actually changing. It is a sophisticated form of silent power, the power to defer your life under the guise of due diligence. Consider the internal relief that comes when two people give you conflicting advice. You don't feel frustrated. You feel safe. As long as the experts disagree, your inaction remains reasonable. If there is no consensus, there is no obligation. You have successfully diffused the responsibility of your own life into a committee of advisors. You aren't looking for a map. You are looking for a reason to stay exactly where you are. There is a specific moment of dark psychology that occurs when you receive the exact answer you need. It's the answer that leaves no room for excuses. In that moment, the true seeker acts, but the person performing readiness does something else. They nod, they write it down, and then they ask a slightly different version of the same question. They are trying to find a way back into the gray area. They are trying to turn a conclusion back into a conversation. The male mindset often traps itself here by valuing complexity over clarity. You convince yourself that the situation is too nuanced for a simple fix, and therefore,
more consultation is required. But complexity is often just the fog we conjure to hide the exit. You don't need more perspectives. You have had the answer for months. You just haven't liked the price of admission. Some of the most informed people in the world are also the most stagnant. They have used other people's wisdom as a substitute for their own courage. Not because they lack judgment, but because judgment requires accountability.
There's always more to know, another book to read, another expert to consult, but at some point the research becomes the resistance. You are not a student of life, you are a tourist of possibilities, perpetually packing your bags but never leaving the station. The help you keep asking for isn't your way out, it is the wall you are building. Fear is rarely the intruder we think it is. Most often, it is a guest we have invited, fed, and meticulously maintained.
You likely know the edges of your primary fear with a lover's intimacy. You have named it in private, traced its history, and articulated its origins with the precision of a historian. This is the brutal reality of fear maintenance. For many, the act of knowing the fear has become the ultimate substitute for moving through it. You aren't paralyzed by a monster. You are sitting in a chair you built, reading a book about a monster. In the world of dark psychology, a maintained fear is the most elegant excuse ever devised. It provides a service that simple laziness never could. It externalizes causality. As long as you have a legitimate psychological blockage, a trauma, a social anxiety, a specific wound, your stasis is no longer a choice. It is a condition.
This is the male mindset at its most defensive, using the language of self-awareness to construct an architecture of avoidance so credible that no one would ever expect you to move. You aren't hiding from the world, you are hiding behind the story of why you can't enter it. Observe the way some people speak about their limitations. They describe their fears with a literary, almost rehearsed precision. When you listen closely, you realize you aren't hearing a cry for help. You are hearing a defense attorney presenting a closing argument. The goal isn't to find a solution, it's to ensure the audience agrees that the cage is locked. The harsh truth is that if that fear were suddenly lifted, you wouldn't feel relieved. You would feel terrified. Without your fear, you would be left standing in the open air with nothing to explain why you haven't yet become the person you claimed you wanted to be. The silent power of a kept fear is that it protects your potential from evaluation. As long as you are held back, your greatness remains a theoretical possibility. The moment the fear is gone, your results are all that's left. This is the deep, unsettling realization. The years you spent waiting for the fear to lift were not imposed on you. They were chosen. You were the one standing guard at the door, making sure the light didn't get in and spoil the darkness you've learned to call home. There is a quiet, God-angled perspective here that offers no comfort, only weight. The decade you spent inside this private architecture of avoidance was not wasted. A man who has lived within such a sophisticated system of self-deception for that long is not weak. He is disciplined. He is capable of immense psychological endurance. The suffering was real, and the effort required to maintain such a consistent lie is a form of strength, even if misdirected. You have spent years becoming an expert on the wall. That expertise is a tool, one that is finally ready to be turned toward the foundation. You are not an inhabitant of your fear. You are its author. The realization that you wrote the script is the most unsettling moment of your life, but it is also the only moment where the ending is no longer fixed. The future isn't being prevented by what you're afraid of. It's being prevented by your need to keep the fear alive. The world respects a person with high standards. We are taught that discernment is the mark of an elite mind, that to settle is to fail, and that selectivity is the ultimate proof of integrity. You have likely turned down opportunities, walked away from projects, or stayed in the spectator's seat because nothing was quite worthy of your entry. You called it wisdom. You called it having a bar. But the brutal reality is that your standards have quietly become your ceiling. They are no longer a floor that prevents you from falling. They have become the roof that prevents you from rising. There is a specific, dark psychology at play when we weaponize our principles against our progress. High standards are psychologically unassailable. No one challenges a person who demands excellence without sounding
like they are advocating for mediocrity. This makes your refusal to move the most dangerous form of self-limitation. It carries no shame. You can sit in stasis for a decade and feel a sense of pride while doing it, convinced that you are a guardian of quality in a world of clutter. But the harsh truth is that you aren't protecting your integrity. You are protecting your ego from the messiness of a beginning. Consider the man reviewing a piece of work. It is undeniably good, but his eyes narrow, searching for the one flaw that disqualifies it. He finds it, a real, articulable imperfection. He feels a surge of righteous validation, but a silent observer in the room notices something different. The flaw he found was real, but his search for it was inevitable. The goal wasn't to evaluate, it was to find a reason to say no. Rejection is safe. To reject something is to remain superior to it.
To accept something, to actually begin, is to submit to the brutal reality of being a novice. The male mindset often obsesses over the perfect strike, the idea that one must wait for the definitive moment to act. But this is the architecture of a prison. The most elegant cages are the ones with principles written on the walls. You stay inside not because you are trapped, but because you are too busy admiring the interior design of your own taste. You've convinced yourself that you are waiting for the right thing. But the right thing is a moving target designed to ensure you stay exactly where you are. This is the silent power of the permanent critic. You never have to be judged on your results because you never produce any. You remain an untapped genius, a master of potential.
Forever untainted by the flawed reality of execution. But starting something real means accepting that it will be insufficient. It means allowing yourself to be exposed to evaluation. It means realizing that the people you look down on for settling are actually miles ahead of you, simply because they were willing to be seen in their imperfection. Your integrity hasn't been your guide. It has been your warden. It has worked against you for years with your full cooperation and your complete respect. You haven't been discerning. You have been elaborate. The realization that your highest values have been the very tools used to keep you small is the most unsettling insight of all. You are standing in a doorway of your own making, and the only thing keeping you from the life you want is the very standard you use to define yourself.